Okay, everyone. So we are doing a series of presentations on the Book of Revelation, different chapters, going through a few things. And what I'm going to do here is just an introduction to the whole book. So hopefully, terms of reference of how we can look at Revelation, and why we look at Revelation, the Book of Revelation, the way we do. Oh, here we go. So, firstly, a definition of the word. So, people are familiar with the term, or fairly familiar with the term apocalypse. Now, if you Google apocalypse images, or even the word itself, it'll often come as end of the world disaster, destroyed cities, smoke and ruins. That's what pops into people's minds when they hear the word apocalypse. But the word apocalypse is just another word for the Greek word for revelation. And here is a definition. It says it comes from the verb to reveal, and then it says to uncover, to take the cover off something that was previously covered. So there is judgment in it. There is doom and gloom in certain parts, if you like, for certain situations and certain organizations and certain people from time to time. But the whole book is not a book of doom and gloom. It is a book with the happiest ending of any book that's ever been written in the history of ever. So don't be put off by that idea. Again, a definition. Things hitherto withdrawn from view are made visible to all, and it's a style of writing that's dramatic and relies on symbols. Different schools of thought when it comes to the Book of Revelation. There's a thing called the preterist view, which is that all the events described in the book are things that happened around about the time of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in AD 70. Matthew 24 and other chapters in the Bible deal with that as well. Some people believe that all that happens in Revelation is purely in the past and purely historical. I'll show you as we go through why I don't believe that stands up to scrutiny. The historicist view, which is our view, generally in the Revival Fellowship, that's the way people look at it. It's an overview of church history describing various times of persecution and tribulation, things the church went through and is going through, and obviously the end is a good end. Idealist view interpret Revelation symbolically, non-literal, a battle of between God and the satanic forces of evil. A futurist view, it's quite well known. That's where you get things like the secret rapture theory goes along with the futurist view. A prophetic account of future events, specifically focused on the end of this age. So you'll get things about the Antichrist will be rise up out of politics, and usually an American president or something like that. And it's all speculation and imagination. And there's reasons why we reject three and hold to one, which is the historicist view. So let's just go through. I heard somebody talking recently and saying about just doctrine in general, that the salvation doctrine and doctrine in general, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And one of the first thing you do with a jigsaw puzzle is you establish the borders. You establish the borders, and we're going to establish the borders of the Book of Revelation, not our borders, but the borders that are set inside the book itself. Revelation 1, verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show unto his servants the things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. So the revelation is of Jesus, that not necessarily about him personally, but from him to John, things which must shortly come to pass. That's the first sign of a border, that it's things from that point on. This is written in about AD 90. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So it's things beyond AD 90, things which must shortly come to pass. And the sentence signified it, as I say, it means by it's going to be done in symbols. That's what the word means. In verse 3, it says, "Blessed is he that reads and they that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things written therein, for the time is at hand." I believe it's the only book in the Bible that tells you that you'll be blessed if you hear the words and keep those things which are written therein. Obviously, every book in the Bible is a good book to read, and every book will bring a blessing. But this one is stated that it will be a blessing. And we don't want to put it in the too hard box. We don't want to put it away because of difficulties and challenges, because there is a reward in the effort of gaining a God-given understanding of what is going on in the chapters of Revelation. So, as I say, it was written by, generally agreed, it was written by, well, everyone knows it was written by John. The Revelation is from Jesus to John. He was on the Isle of Patmos, which was a kind of a place of exile by the Roman authorities, a bit like Napoleon on Elba and Napoleon on St. Helena. He was exiled there. And generally it's agreed it's around the year 95 AD. So the idea that the preterist idea that the things that happened around the year 70 AD already is out of sync with what we've read, because those things had already come to pass by the time John put pen to paper. So the idea that he's writing about things that had already happened and actually were already written down in the history of Josephus wrote. Josephus was a noted historian of the first century, and he's already written about the fall of Jerusalem. So in what way would that be a revelation? It was things that had already happened and were already recorded, and it will be outside the borders of the jigsaw, if you remember that, by being a thing in the past. So with Revelation, now, Jesus mentioned this, not necessarily about the things we're going to read about, but just as a principle when it comes to prophecy. Now, I tell you before it come, that when it come to pass, you may believe that I am a similar one in John. And now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it's come to pass, you might believe. So it's the fulfilling of the prophecies, the fulfilling of the, as I say, the historicist view is the unrolling of history from 95 AD onwards. And we can look back in history and see when those things came to pass, the detail of them. And it's in that we gain faith, belief, and history itself is a witness to the truth of the interpretation of the prophecy. You need history as the witness. Otherwise, it's not yet fulfilled, won't have the same effect. Chapters 1 to 3 deal with the seven churches, and people say, well, those things they were already in existence when John started to write. So in what way is that a revelation of the future? Well, there's a couple of things about it. Firstly, there is a revelation in those chapters, in the things revealed, how the state of those churches is revealed, both to themselves and to the other churches, because everyone can see into everybody's church. Everyone can read about everybody else's church. And you can see the things that are strong and the things that are weak. And in that, there is a revelation. And I suppose the positioning of the seven churches in the early past, before they get onto the real prophetical stuff about the unfolding of the future, there's a couple of things. One of them, there's a rule in the Bible: the judgment must begin at the house of God, and that we are to set our house in order. And having the revelation of things, great things in the world, and it would be no good to you if you didn't have your house in order. We need that. The rest of it is very much a benefit to us, but it's of no benefit at all to us if we're leaking vessels or that we're not looking after our own future. So they're the seven churches. Chapter 4 starts off, "After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was of a trumpet talking with me, which said, 'Come up hither, and I will show you the things which must be hereafter. So this is after the prophecies and the insights and the revelation of things in the seven churches. A trumpet in the Old Testament, particularly in the wilderness, was a sign of that things were going to move on. The scene was going to move on. In the wilderness, they might be camped in one place for quite a while, over the 40 years, and then they would move on. And that move would be started by a trumpet. And we find through the book of Revelation that the scene in history can be settled for a while, not much changes, and then it can be great changes. And that was often, in the wilderness, that was signified by a trumpet. Things were gonna change and move on. So again, just reference to the jigsaw puzzle. Again, it says, "Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter." So anything that is before this time doesn't really fit in the borders. It will be outside the borders. Any interpretation which would be of things in previous to this, it doesn't fit inside the borders that Revelation itself is drawing on symbols. So Revelation is full of symbols, and there's a number of ways to crack the code, if you like. One of them is how they're used in the Old Testament. So we will see things like rainbows and stars, which we're going to look at, dragons in the Old Testament, and another. So it will match how they're used, or partly how they're used in the Old Testament. That's the key to the symbols. And the other thing is as the history unfolds from the rise of the Roman Empire, which is what's happening in John's time, we hope to reach the modern day, chapter by chapter. Some of the symbols reflect a place in a particular time. What you've got on the screen there is a Celtic cross, a Celtic or a Celtic cross. Now, you could use that to represent Britain. That this is not a symbol that's in the book of Revelation. It's just to explain how symbols work. Now, if you used the Celtic cross to symbolize Britain, you will be symbolizing Britain at a particular time, because it's not something that symbolizes Britain today. And in Revelation, the symbols are used not just to represent powers and systems and to give us insights into what's being said, but often in a particular time frame also. So lots of people have written about the symbols in Revelation, including Sir Isaac Newton. He went through them. He wrote a lot about the book of Revelation. Some of it's very difficult to understand. I couldn't anyway. But when he lists the symbols and what they mean, he does pretty well. He does pretty well. So and lots of expositors, I think they're called, people that have studied Revelation, Protestant expositors, come up with the same solutions to the symbols, and we need them to fit. We need them to consistently fit. And Celtic Britain. On that one, just another symbol. So this is a symbol from this. Again, it's not a symbol. It's in Revelation particularly, but just how symbols work. This is a portrait of the Greenwich Hospital. These are what you call Greenwich pensioners, people that used to go to war in the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy. And there's a man second from the right, a black man with a red hat on. And what that means, for people who understand the symbols of the time, it means liberty. So if you wore a red hat or a red cap, it meant you were free. The same would be in the USA, and the same would be in France in that particular period. So anybody who saw such a thing in a work of art, there was no photographs in the early 1800s, would recognize that means that man is free. So lots can be understood through symbols. Biblical symbols are used, obviously. The rainbow is used in Revelation in chapter 10. And a rainbow in the Bible is the sign of a covenant. The original rainbow is the sign of a covenant between God and the earth. And I believe in Revelation it's a symbol of the new covenant. But it's So you can use the rainbow. As I say, it's used in Genesis as a sign of a covenant between God and the earth. But when it appears in Revelation, we can just say it means, or it can be used as a sign of a covenant. Not necessarily the same covenant, but a covenant nevertheless, because it's a sign of one. Stars. So we're going to look next at Revelation chapter 12, and that talks about a woman clothed with 12 stars. Or there's 12 stars involved in her appearance anyway. And in the prophecies of the seven churches, it says, so the angel appears in the seven stars, and it says the seven stars in Revelation chapter 1 verse 20 are the angels of the seven churches. So, and in Malachi it talks about the priest's lips should keep knowledge, for they should seek the Lord of his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts, the priest. And you can just about see there in Strong's Concordance, an angel is a messenger. So the stars are used in Revelation chapter 1 as basically the pastors of the churches. That's a common interpretation of them. They will be the leading lights, the responsible ones in the church, not the churches themselves. It represents the ministers of the churches. In Genesis, famously, Joseph has a dream, and the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And Joseph and Jacob and his brethren understood that the sun and the moon represented the mother and the father. You can see that in verse 10. And the 11 stars are his 11 brothers, because there it says, shall I and my mother and my brethren come down and bow ourselves to the earth? Now, sometimes the 12 stars in Revelation chapter 12 are put for the 12 tribes of Israel because of this verse. But it doesn't, in Joseph's dream, it represents the leaders or the leading lights of the tribes, not the tribes. So there's a slight difference there, in that it represents leaders, and in this case of tribes and families. In Revelation chapter 1, it represents leaders or pastors of churches. In Revelation chapter 9, as a star fell from heaven, and that represents Muhammad. And Muhammad was he was to be the head of a tribe, a family that was to look after the religion of the day in Mecca, which was to do with the moon god Sin. He was to have the keys to the Kaaba, and that was taken from him. So he was a star, but a leader that fell from heaven, fell from a place of power and honor. So, just on pictures. So if you go through the chapters, you see beasts with 7 heads and 10 horns, and all sorts of strange things, really. And you can get lots of images on the internet representing what has been written. John saw them, and he wrote down what they looked like. But it's very difficult to draw what somebody else has seen that you have never seen. So from time to time, we will put images up of the things described in Revelation, but don't put too much weight on them, because they come from somebody's imagination and not directly from the Lord. It doesn't hurt to try and draw the picture of the thing that's being written about. But yeah, no, there isn't a lot of consistency. This is a thing called a monkfish, and there's a famous that this is the one drawn in France in the 1700s, and somebody found a monkfish and described it to someone else who'd never seen it, and the other person drew it, and this is what he drew. He drew a fish with it's just got a monk's head, and you can apply that to Revelation. So things are second-hand drawings. It doesn't mean that there's any inspiration in the drawings, people's best efforts. But as I say, don't put too much weight on it. When you do slideshows, pictures are useful. They help to break things up. and we will have some pictures, but again, don't be putting too much weight on it. I think this came out of a Bible commentary. And it just says that this very good thing. It says the prophecy is not vague conjecture. It is not a general statement. It is minute and definite and particular, and has been as definitely, minutely, and particularly fulfilled. It says we have a more sure word of prophecy. That's what the Bible says. We see through a glass darkly, but that doesn't mean that some things we see aren't certain and other things are yet to come and yet to be fulfilled. So things that are minutely and distinctly and definitely prophesied about in Revelation will include the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the rise and fall of papal power, the rise of Islam, the Reformation, the French Revolution, and the fall of papal power. We can go through all of those chapter by chapter, verse by verse, symbol by symbol, alongside the history of those events, and you will see that the two things, the thing prophesied and when it came to pass, they are absolutely hand in glove. They are hand in glove. And there's two things about that. One, it gives you confidence. The thing is certain. And then things that are for the future, streets paved with gold, a place where there's no more tears, are as certain as the things that have passed. So blessed is the man that reads and understands and keeps the words of this prophecy. So the next, that's the end of this presentation. So that will cover any chapters that we do within a few days. I'm hoping to upload just a look at chapter 12, the woman, the dragon, and the child. And as I say, things are symbolized in Revelation. So the woman is not a woman, the dragon is not a dragon, and the child is not a child, because it's symbolized. We want to see what those symbols mean, what happened historically, and how those things fit together perfectly, really, and lead from the other chapters and to the chapters that are in front of it. So we leave that one here today, and we'll look to load another one up later this week.